Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the Musical Connections podcast. This is the show where you'll discover more about the music of Newfoundland and Labrador. And joining me right now in the studio, we're going to discover a brand new Southern Gothic band. They formed back in the fall of 2024 and put out their first album, Ship Shape, back in December. And they did this live at the Ship. And this is the brainchild of my guest at this time, Pat Sloan, and welcoming back to the podcast, Ben Chapman-Smith. Guys, they make up The Lost and Found. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Zach.
And congratulations again on this brand new band. You put out Lost and Found Ship Shape back in December. And you also put out your RPM challenge submission this year called Lies and Bad Intentions, which I forgot to say in the intro. But it is a great band. I feature one of your songs on Newfound releases. I think it was the start of the year, called Raccoon, and very unique sound, Ben, because when I've had you on for 3 times now. I think you're one of the only 3-time guests on this show.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, it is definitely, especially compared to what we've talked about previously and what you would have heard from me. It is definitely not metal or punk. It's something completely different, and yeah, it's a good time.
Yeah, and I think it's a bit more of like outlaw country. I would probably get to. Probably imagine.
There, yeah. I think we get kind of elements of everything. I mean, it's all over the place because the song choice is all over the place. But there's arguably bits of bluegrass, definitely outlaw country, folk.
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff. There's
a lot of singer-songwriter stuff.
Yeah.
Or storytelling stuff, I mean to say.
Yeah.
Even elements of like vaudeville, maybe circus stuff
Klezmer,
like
yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah. Darker.
Circus, we're going to, I think that's kind of the goal we'll develop.
Yeah. Even maybe like New Orleans stuff, Dixie, maybe
Dixieland.
Like it's the
okay.
All these things.
Yeah,
it's guessing.
For sure.
Is the name of the game.
It's definitely a brand new project that I remember you and I were talking about this during Music Celebration Week back in September, and you were talking about this new Southern Gothic group that you were coming up with, and you put out the debut effort Ship Shape back in December, and it's a great sounding album, and it really blew me away because, again, I've known you to be in the metal and punk scene for such a long time, but now you're diving more into like the folk and Americana and Gothic kind of sound.
Yeah. Well, so I wouldn't necessarily say that it's new because this is actually a project that this project is new, but the ethos, the kind of approach to kind of darker folk music and stuff like that has always been something I've been doing. I had a project when I first moved into the province called Benedict Drinks, which was the first project. Traveled across the province, played almost every single brewery in the province. A couple of them couldn't make it, unfortunately, but 13 or so dates. And back in Toronto, I had the same thing, and I did RPM as Benedict Drinks too. And eventually I was kind of like, well, you know what, this is going to be, it's a fun style to play in, and to really expand it, I need a team, and I ended up meeting Pat at some open mics, and we kind of ran into each other a couple of times.
Said, do you want to play bass on this stuff? And I said, yeah.
Please play bass on my stuff. I'm sure it was kind of like...
it worked out, yeah.
Yeah, great. So now we have a new version of it where we're actually, writing some originals. We've got a bit more of a kind of vision of what we're doing with it, and it absolutely is a blast. It's
it's been a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And would you say it's like a bit more of a complete version of Benedict Drinks?
I wouldn't. I mean, even though I guess in some ways, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't even compare. Obviously, I just said that they're kind of similar, but in terms of musical stylings or the atmosphere of creativity, where I'm creating stuff that isn't, again, using loud electric guitars and drum kits, it's always been a style I've been very interested in, like the folk punk and, again, Southern Gothic kind of a thing. Right. But I would say that this is its own beast, just by virtue of the fact that Pat's like a big part of it. And like we're trying to make it into a collaborative kind of a thing, and really build it into something that's, I guess, in a positive way. I mean, this rebuilding the wheel kind of a thing, reinventing the wheel. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's kind of got its own life. That's for sure.
Oh, for sure.
It's kind of like been a little bit of and somewhat intentionally like rotating cast of characters. Like our band takes on a different form depending on the show.
Yeah.
It's almost like can be kind of event or project based kind of thing, depending on whatever we kind of dream up. Mm-hmm. Right.
What are the opportunities? Who's in town?
Yeah.
I think a big part of this, and this is partially for, where I was coming from when I first started the project, is I wanted something. When I started that Benedict Drinks project way back in the day, the entire purpose of it to me was I would have all these different bands that were full rock bands that take a lot of time to write originals for, and then things would always happen. And I mean, I started probably at least a dozen projects throughout my early career in Toronto, and things would happen where we would finally get to a point where we're playing shows where we recorded an album, and then the drummer moves away or something happens. And I made that Benedict Drinks project with this idea of being like, whatever, whoever shows up kind of a thing. It can be an independent thing, and it can be, and that also is what kind of makes it fun is the fact that you're really celebrating the fact that people are around in a different way,
right?
Rather than it being like an obligation, like you have to be here for the show. It's like, oh man, Gina's back in town, let's play a gig, right? And it's actually a bit more of
it's really good quality time with people that you love and that kind of thing.
We're celebration music.
Yeah,
we are wedding music for evereveryday life,
for sure.
That's what we try to be.
Yeah, like our first ship shape, we had a tuba player, Olive, and clarinet. We had Lisa. Yeah, that was really cool. I'd never really been around tubas very much before, especially I'd never played in a band like in this respect with clarinet or tuba. So that was really neat. And who knows, that may be another thing in the future with them. It may not. Like I think it probably will.
I think there's some talks.
Yeah,
there's some talks.
But it's always different depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
We're sort of core, I guess, members.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the band really is you, Ben, and you, Pat. Yeah. But it can be rotating no matter what it is. It's kind of like, say if you're if you had like a show on television and you have rotating members, is that kind of like what you're going for when it came to this Lost and Found project?
I think the big idea behind it is to be open to these things and to say we like the novelty of being able to say, oh man, Jenny's in the crowd, jump up on stage and so
it's supposed to be fun.
It's supposed to be fun. It's more about making music like a participatory thing. And I think that a lot of the idea about being a collaborative comes from this idea of like, well, why can't we have people that we like that are talented just jump on stage and play music with us? Why can't we make these things happen in these ways? So yes, to answer your question, I think that ultimately, and this is still early days for sure, but I think the hope is we're going to develop into a way where we have some featured players, people that consistently come back, again, Olive and Lisa and Gina. Yeah. And we're talking to some other new people too.
Gina's great.
That are all super talented. And if I can just be like, show up to this show and everybody shows up every time, I'm going to do that. Right. But if things can't happen, like we said before, we don't want it to be hampered by the fact that people have different schedules and, logistics is kind of the biggest killer in music, I find a lot of the time. There would be so much amazing music in bands, but then figuring out how to make things happen with time and space happens, and you go,
it's the hardest part for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, of course, Ben, you've been on the show 3 times. This is your first time on the show, Pat, right. And I don't really know that much about you. So tell me a little bit about yourself and tell our listeners a bit more about Pat Sloan.
I'm a songwriter, a musician. I write a lot of my own stuff, too. I've been starting to play around. I'm originally from Niagara Falls, Ontario. And then I was in Toronto for a bunch of years, about 10 years. And it's time for something new, so I jumped over here. And I really love St. John's. It's been awesome. But yeah, I've just been a musician my whole life. That's kind of my thing. I teach music for part of my living. I play. And I really love to write. I suppose that's probably my favorite thing. I like to improvise a lot, too. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, were there any bands here that you've played before you got into this Lost and Found project, or are you just doing this solo by yourself?
Yeah, there's a band with Tim Dodge called Dodge Band. They are like a heavier thing, so I played drums in that band. I guess I'm primarily a guitarist, is where I've spent most of my time kind of working on. But I'm also a drummer. I've been playing drums my whole life, too, and a bass player. But yeah, I played drums in that band. And I'm trying to think if there were other ones, but I think
you had what was that thing for the room? The rooms, the songwriting thing as your solo.
That was one of my solo things. Yeah, like I won like an Arts and Letters award, and then
wicked song.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's a wicked song. What's it? Tell the people what it's called, Pat.
It's called "Can't Wait." It's called "Can't Wait."
It's a good song
by Pat Sloan. Yeah,
it's a really good song.
That was really cool. Yeah, I just kind of recorded that and submitted it. It was like I don't know if you're familiar. It's like a grant contest kind of thing.
Yes, some of the people that have been a part of that, I think Lorna Lovell's won that. Summer Bennett's been a part of that too.
Yeah,
and
she was there when
Oh wow.
Yeah, Summer Bennett. That was really cool. Yeah, they put my song in the rooms for like a month or so. People could go and listen to it. I was blown away by that. Yeah.
Wonderful. I'm going to stick with you for a minute. So, how did you two guys meet?
We met at we actually met at work where I worked, and then you were doing sound on a gig that I played in a cover band. That's another band,
Right.
Edison Lane. And then, but really, we started hanging out at the Ship's open mic when James Avalon was hosting that, and then Ben now became the host there. And
Once more,
yeah, and
the history of it.
we just kind of started hanging out there, and it was great. Like that had been really awesome for a building community for me, just kind of hanging out and playing songs and like being like, oh, well, let's play together, right? So that's kind of what happened. We started playing songs at the Ship's open mic Monday nights.
Which was the entire idea behind the Ship Shape thing, was kind of like, okay, we have this project. We wanted to be playing shows. Let's set a deadline. And we have this open mic, which is a convenient way to get people out. So we said, let's just learn a set and record it live. I agree. I think the album came out great. But did you know? Tell them how that was recorded.
We had all these designs on setting up a pretty sophisticated recording, because it was a live album is what that was. So we got the whole band together and played it at the Ship at the open mic, right? So you have all these other people in the room who are also going up and playing and hanging out and coming up. But November was a bit of a killer that month.
I was sick the entire month. We planned all this stuff.
Sick.
It was brutal.
You were deathly
I was dying.
I was too.
It was not good.
And so we just ended up recording it like a really simple setup with like Zoom.
It's hilarious to me because like I was basically written the entire thing off, and Pat shows up with his field recorder. Yeah. And we're like, well, maybe it'll be good.
Yeah.
And I remember
on the table.
Yeah. We had like 30 seconds, or like, I don't know, probably over here, close to the bass. We'll make sure that it'll pick that up because it's not going through the mains. And then I remember listening back to it and actually being like, I remember just smiling and being like, this is great. Like, this is...
Yeah, it actually worked out.
Yeah, it worked out really great. So good job on the placement, buddy.
We weren't sure if it was going to happen for a minute there. But,
I was almost certain it was gone for, and then, and it sounds decent, so hey.
And you recorded this at the open mic night where you were hosting too, right, Ben?
Yeah, so
it was your birthday.
It was my birthday as well, which was nice. Again, back to the entire celebration stuff. I really like that being an idea behind what we do live. I think, we really want to be the ambassadors of good time. We want to make sure that people are feeling like they should and can stomp their feet, clap their hands, and sing along.
Yeah, it's kind of like a party, right?
You want
anyway.
100%. So yeah, it was my birthday, and that was fun. And I kind of did this whole, I don't know, we planned it out. It was a good time. It was my birthday. There you go. That's what I have to add to them. They did. Like little raccoon pirates.
Yeah.
Because
Amy made it, the bartender, made that. That was awesome. Brought it out.
The Ship's been a good place for me. I feel like
lots of love.
Yeah, lots of love at the Ship. It's always been. I mean, and again, I say I returned to hosting. I hosted it a ton when Music NL was doing this in 2021. I think I did it like 13 times.
Wow.
It's been a regular thing for me. Yeah. When Dave Shears was still the project manager, there were many a time where I got a last minute call on Monday being like, hey, do you want to, can you maybe come down here?
Yeah. And because you knew all those like dark folk songs from Benedict Drinks.
Yeah.
That was the material that you were playing there. And that's kind of how it happens.
Exactly. So that's kind of getting us up and running to the point where we can play. We're looking at booking some more shows. We've got some stuff where we're organizing live events with bands, but we're also, because of the flexibility and versatility of the project, we can go and play, standard cover circuit, like brewery gigs and stuff like that, make sure that we throw in maybe a bit of Waylon Jennings or stuff like that that's actually going to hit with people that are looking for covers.
Oh, yeah.
But we find what's really great about this music is because of its nature, because it's got folk and the instrumentation's familiar and all these things, there's a lot of like local receptors for traditional trad and folk music that this hits really well. Right. So even if people aren't able to sing along with the chorus the first time they hear it because they've never heard it, it still feels so familiar that it's a really accessible style of music, which again, compared to the punk and metal bands of the past,
for sure.
I just want to highlight how much not like that it is. You should go listen to it. We're on Lost and Found, the Lost and Found Band NL is our Bandcamp and social media Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, how did you come up with this name, The Lost and Found? Whoever wants to take that on.
I think it was just something that kind of described the ethos of like, Lost and Found. It's loose. We have people coming and going. It's like, Yeah.
That was definitely part of it was definitely to be tongue in cheek about the fact that it's meant to be a bit of a collaborative, and it's like lost and found musicians, like people that were just kind of pulling up. For me, I also just really like the, we'll say imagery for lack of a better word, but kind of the subject matter of Lost and Found as a concept. The idea of having this dark music that talks about like, not again, it's not like super dark. It's not like it's going to make you weep or anything like that, but it's not like sunshine and rainbows. And I think that having, especially folk music, having music that's going to be, that kind of says it's okay to feel that way. It kind of plays off this sense of like desperation and hope, which I think is really important and fundamental to music in general, let alone folk music. So that was kind of always a big thing for me, is like it kind of felt like with the subject matter, it resonated with the style of music and the kind of things we were singing about. It reflected the format of the project in terms of it being a collaborative. There's probably some more stuff, but that's probably...
we like the aesthetic of it.
Yeah.
I suppose.
It looks good on paper too.
Oh, yes.
One of those little and signs, and it's
ampersand.
Yes.
Lovely. Ampersand. That could be another song you guys could do, or maybe that could be the title of an album. There you go.
You never know. Yeah.
Now, what are some of the sounds and some of the bands that you guys take inspiration from to, help craft this new sound?
Big one for me is the Devil Makes Three.
Yeah, Devil Makes Three.
It's a good quarter of our set, if not more. Possibly originally almost, for me, when I was first doing this with Benedict Drinks, again, I got into this through the folk punk avenue. I had a lot of friends in Toronto that, were folk punks and had like punk houses, and you would just go to these house party shows and people would just be playing this everywhere. And I always dug that. And I liked, again, like I've always enjoyed all types of music, even though, again, I'm usually known as like, doing metal and punk stuff. A lot of like my early days on guitar was like studying jazz guitar and stuff like that. And I love music. I love all kinds of music. I love supporting people in self-expression, this kind of a thing. So I was in this community and I was like, okay, this is maybe a good opportunity to do this kind of stuff. And so that was another band that was on play around that time, Devil Makes Three. So I was like, okay, let's check them out. I'd say some other ones, because we cover them, include Ben Kaplan.
I was going to say Ben Kaplan. He's an East Coaster.
Yeah, has that kind of vibe. I think, again, it's tricky depending on the lineup, but like there's things where we've talked about getting into like klezmer and hot jazz elements of this.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where it develops, because I think this first RPM was a lot about kind of setting the tone for where we are right now.
Yeah, it's like a snapshot. It's a quick.
But I expect stuff's going to evolve.
I think so.
And without promising that it will either, but like I think it's a project where concept albums could work well, where we could do something where it's like, we're going to make it as circusy as we can here. We're going to make it as, hot jazz, Paris, whatever here kind of a thing, as
whatever
Django as we can kind of.
Yeah, whatever we're interested at the time, which is
and who's around.
Yeah, and who's around.
And that's kind of why it's wicked too, is because you never know.
Totally. It's like one thing that I really like about this is that we do have that freedom to kind of, like there's a lot of freedom to move around. There's a lot of genres that cross over. Like myself personally too, like Ben was saying, like he studied jazz. Like I studied jazz. Like when I went to school for music, I studied jazz.
It shows more with his playing. But
I studied classical music. I was in like a punk band. I was in, I love heavy music. I love Elliott Smith. I love I just love music. I like tons of stuff, right? I love hip hop. So all of these things, it's nice to be able to put a bunch of things together.
Wonderful.
I don't imagine we'll be rapping anytime soon.
If you want to get semantic about it, if you start looking at lyrics and rhyme schemes, what's the difference, buddy?
Right.
There are a couple of country tracks out there that you could probably incorporate it, like "The Man Comes Around" by Johnny Cash, "A Boy Named Sue."
Yeah,
sure, yeah. I've gotten again, especially when I did that brewery tour, there was a lot of people. I mean, aside from asking for "Sweet Caroline," there was a lot of requests for Johnny Cash too.
Yeah,
Definitely. Again, and same way, I think there is for what we do, there's receptors for it. There's people that already kind of know the vibe and the style, and they can hear it, and it sounds really familiar. So I think
there's more infrastructure set up for folk. We're in Newfoundland.
Say that.
Yeah.
Compared to being in a metal band, like this is what Ben was kind of saying. Like, there's a lot more that you can plug into with that style of music compared to some heavier stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, we're going to change subjects for a minute because you've also been running a production company promoting metal and punk music here in town called Can't Sleep Productions. And you've been holding off a wide array of shows since you started this, I believe, back in the fall fall or winter or something like that. I may be wrong on that front, but you featured a fair amount of great shows that you've had at the second stage, which has since closed down. And it's sad to hear that it's closed. So tell me a little bit about Can't Sleep Productions.
Can't Sleep Productions came about in a roundabout way. I wouldn't actually classify it as punk and metal because it's really meant to be, so I teach music and I have extended my education into like industry education stuff, which means there's bits of artist development. I'm helping people produce stuff. I'm basically kind of having, the first session, and in addition to asking what they want to learn how to play on guitar, whatever, I'm saying, what are things that you want to accomplish as a musician if you want to do this? That's basically led me into helping kind of mentor some bands.
Okay.
And a big part of that is trying to show them how these things work, like how you organize your shows and so I end up organizing a lot of events with these acts for these acts to get them some experience on stage and stuff like that and kind of help them develop. And fundamentally what happened is I kept on organizing these shows in this manner. I won't go and list the bands, but I kept on doing this. And eventually people started being like, you going to post these somewhere? Like, is there a social media handle where we can follow your stuff? So eventually I was like, okay, I guess I should probably do this. So that it kind of came out of necessity that I was like, okay, we'll just do Can't Sleep. Let's get it done. I've been really busy. I do literally everything. There's stuff where it's like folk, and like some of the Lost and Found stuff has been Can't Sleep Productions. We're going to be having, I'm not announcing the lineup yet, but in like mid-May, we're doing a cool like outlaw country night with a bunch of different acts in town and bands, and that's going to be Can't Sleep, but it's very folk oriented. I just dropped 3 shows. One of them is a jazz punk night with Big Space, Killer 9000, Dickie and the Birds at the Shep. That's on April 11th. There is the Kicker, which is a younger, at least half of them, 2/3 of them are in high school still. They're doing an album release. We've just produced an album for them, so they're dropping that on CD at Pavlov's Electric Veranda on the 5th and 6th of April. And on the 4th of April at Black Sheep, I'm doing a show with Pat Sloan, his solo stuff, Greta and the Goldfish, Boys Who Think, Twin Brooks, and the Fence Sitters. It's everybody. And that's going to be very like indie leaning. So what I'm really trying to do, again, it's while people know me from a certain territory, and I'm not trying actively to distance myself.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Because
Myself
I'm
included.
always going to be there with it. But I think it's the same thing where like people kind of knew that I was a bass player first before realizing like, oh, he actually is a guitar player and he actually does vocals and he actually like I can play drums, and there's a lot of other things that I just haven't really shown the scene yet.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of happy about this because again, I do love that community, and the punk and metal community is always going to be close to my heart. But like, again, I love the idea of helping people that want to make music. I think that anybody, even if I don't particularly like what you're doing, I love that human beings are spending their time in creative ways and pursuing their interests. And I couldn't think of a better thing to do with your time than to try to make that accessible to people.
Absolutely. And ever since I've known you, like I first met you when you and Paul Brake, when you were with Precious Blood, you were promoting that big album release show.
So, Paul.
Hey Paul, what's up? So when I first met you, you were promoting that big show, and that's really what I've associated you with as. But ever since I've come to know you, you've been a promoter for heavy metal music, but also for independent music as a whole.
Yes.
You're doing folk, you're doing punk, you're doing country, you're doing all these other genres that may not
Blues
get
and rock, and even actually some cover stuff too. I'll just say that too. There's another one April 12th that's not finalized, but sorry.
Oh no worries. But all I'm saying is like you're also filling a void of like or maybe like expanding on that reach of like I've had Tamara Cater on Musical Connections back in November, and she was talking about how like where Newfoundland and Labrador has come a long way in its music industry. There's still that need for publicists. There's still need for booking agents and managers and stuff. And it seems like you're filling another space where we could have more than enough, because you look at the Maritimes, they have plenty.
Right. A really cool thing that Ben does that I think is awesome is that you are actually like developing, like helping people. You're almost like developing artists.
Yes.
And like you say, there is a lot like you can go to school and learn a ton about whatever, you know, you can learn about music itself, music theory and playing music and all this stuff, or go to a teacher, but like to actually learn about the industry and like, how do I start a band?
Yeah.
How do I go on tour? Like,
What does that mean?
What does that mean? What is all this stuff? Like that, there is like definitely a vacuum there of education. And like, you just kind of got to learn from the people, you know, you learn it by trying and doing it yourself. But like Ben is kind of providing that for a lot, especially like young artists.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool.
If I can, so
Go for it.
there's a lot of things in life that you have to learn on your own. And I think there's a value to experiential learning to actually get your hands dirty to do it. You can learn action and theory, are the same thing. In action, they are not. I think a lot of what I try to do basically is be the person that I would have wanted to help me out back in the day.
Yes.
We've all had that thing where for a silly reason, your progress has been hampered. Either you don't know what the next step is, you don't know how to book a gig, you don't know how to book the recording, you can't find a band. And there are always really simple solutions to this, but you just don't have the perspective to figure that out. So fundamentally, my entire ethos behind this was like, I meet people and like straight up, if I have a new student, I'll be like, what do you want to do? Like, tell me what you want to accomplish in a ridiculous, big sky, daydreaming kind of way. Yeah. And let's see how we would look at making that a practicality. And if you hate all the steps to get you there, maybe it's not the move. But if you really, really, really want it, these are some things that can at least help. And I'm not saying that I don't know everything, but I am actively trying
you know,
to think about it.
You know you're doing.
I will at least put my time and effort and thought into it. And that's
you put a lot of thought.
I can't.
Big time.
I can't.
Big time. Amen to that.
Oh,
Pat.
you guys, thanks. Appreciate it.
And nobody knows everything. I mean, I don't know everything, but if there's one thing that I've learned from covering the music scene, and especially being in media for the past decade. Getting degrees can really, for me, be a waste of time because a lot of But it depends because I went for a communication studies degree, and the most that I've learned out of being in the media is volunteering with CHMR and volunteering with the Muse.
Doing the thing, right?
Yes, I became a better writer because of the Muse. I became a better sound engineer and on-air personality because of CHMR and also for VOWR as well. Right. It's that hands-on experience that can really help you out better in the long run than say what a college degree would do. But it also depends on the circumstance too.
Absolutely. True. And by no means am I ever, I'm not sure if I said anything previously to discount that. Absolutely. I have multiple degrees, diplomas and stuff like that some of them I didn't finish. But
as I said, depends on the circumstance.
But it's also, what are you doing with your time, right? Like
exactly.
If you're, one of the coolest things that's always been to me is like, if you can go and study music post-secondary, you just have time to study music. Do you realize how cool that is? Yeah. Like your life and existence is just studying the knowledge that we have. I mean, obviously it's not everything, but that's invaluable. Now, the question is, are you enrolling in these classes and programs and trying to get these degrees because of the piece of paper? Or are you doing it with the headspace of, I'm going to learn everything I can about this while I'm doing it, and I'm going to use it? Because if you're not using it,
you're losing it.
Well, yeah. Well, it's, it just...
No.
Yeah, but like, why'd you sign up for it in the first place?
Action versus theory and that kind of thing. Like, learning like through action, like what you're saying, is really, I mean, that's how I learn. I mean, I can learn by reading something in a book or learning music theory, but like I find for me and probably most people, until you're making it real for yourself and practical and putting it to use, like it doesn't really mean
anything almost
that much.
Yeah.
It's not really, it hasn't really been transformed into something real or based in reality.
Definitely. Yeah. Application is a necessary step for this stuff. And I think that is something I see all the time with, and it's not just music industry, it's people all over the place where it's like, if hypothetically somebody told me if I follow through and I do all these things, I'll get a job. Right. And it's like that episode of South Park with the underpants gnomes where there's just like one step that's missing. And it's like, what is that step? Right. And it's like, I will show you, play a show. This is how it works. So yeah, I'm a big fan of actually trying to, and I don't call it management. There are some acts that have like said that I'm their manager, and I'm not. I am trying to mentor. I'm trying to show them while I'm doing it so that they can do it, so that I can leave and then they understand and know. Because that's
teach a man to fish.
Teach a man to fish.
Yes.
Teach a man to play guitar. How to teach a man to write a song.
There you go.
That was a fun time too.
Yeah. Have you considered getting into music management at all? Like managing bands?
buddy, I just want to play guitar. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, though? Like,
I know.
Too.
I
Amen to
do.
that.
I think it's again, there's a lot of things in the music industry that get hoisted on you as a necessity of like, oh, you want to pay your bills doing music stuff? Well, you have to expand beyond just playing, or you're playing cover circuit gigs that are going until 2:00 in the morning, 5 days a week. And honestly, I like sleep too much to do that. But yeah, I think I've considered that kind of stuff. But I don't think I need to use the pre-established kind of formats for it. I think I can learn those skills and use those skills in a way that benefits me without having to make that a primary service I offer. Because again, I think, well, I'm not going to say never, because my life is just like that. Opportunities come up and I start going, oh, what if I do this?
Yeah.
But it's never been a goal. I don't know, man. That's a hard one.
Yeah,
you really got
yeah.
me with that. I feel like, yes, in the right circumstance with the right people, yes. But it would have to be a situation where only with projects I really, really deeply care about, that have proven they know what they're doing, that really want to pursue things.
You could manage me if you want.
I mean, it's to me too. Like a lot of us like helping out the homies anyway. So it's like, what's that different? Right. Other than that, we have a formal conversation about like payout, and I'm a little bit more on the hook for you. But I mean, all the time, when I'm organizing shows, when I'm trying to create opportunities, I'm thinking about like, who in town could use a hand?
Yeah.
Who's really, really good that doesn't know like one or two elements that could really set them off? Like I think, again, back to the punk and metal scene, there's so many talented bands out there, but they don't necessarily know how to access the funding cycle of things, which is make or break. If you don't know how to get funds to get off this province, especially in Newfoundland and Labrador,
how do you write a grant, right?
How
do you even look out for what grants exist?
What do these arts organizations even offer us? I've heard conversations where it's like, oh, I'm going to sign up with this arts organization, and they're just going to do stuff for us, and it's like, that's not how this works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, again, if you just I'm kind of getting off onto too much of a tangent here.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I've considered artist management. I don't think it's something that I'm going to actively pursue unless it's a very rare circumstance and it makes sense for everybody involved.
Yeah. I mean, we could be here all day just talking about like how can we improve the music industry? How can we help these young up and coming artists learn everything possible to be successful and really make a living at this?
For sure.
But we could be here all day.
Yeah.
But I really do want to get to wrap this up.
Yes,
but I want to highlight something that you did recently. Through Youth Ventures. It's called the Songwriting Series.
Yes.
And you've had Liz Fagan down there. You've had Pete McDonald from With Violet down there.
Kelly
McMichael's there as well.
Yeah.
So how did that all come together?
Cool. Yeah. So in 2023, I left a job and started working with, briefly, for Music NL as the Music Celebration Week event coordinator. What a mouthful of words.
Yeah.
And shortly after I finished that position, Rhonda Talk, who was the CEO, I believe CEO was the position at the time, had this friend that worked with Youth Ventures that was looking for people that are eager to basically work with young people. And that was about the extent of it. And Rhonda was always trying to find ways to create new collaborations and partnerships with Music NL, which I thought was really cool.
Oh, yes.
So she ended up just kind of saying, hey, listen, if you want to hang around with Music NL for a little bit longer, we have this opportunity for the Youth Ventures program, which is fundamentally a program that's about teaching young people entrepreneurial skills. Mm-hmm. And she said, yeah, and we're gonna partner with Youth Ventures. And basically it's going to be a delivery of teaching people entrepreneurial skills, but specifically focusing on the music industry. So I did a delivery of that that would have been 2024. And that went great. And then they decided, hey, let's try it again since the first one went decently. And the timing just lined up perfectly with RPM season, February. Right. So I said, I know how to get some outreach happening. Because again, a lot of the time this program is delivered like at schools, elementary schools, high schools, and stuff like that. But I thought, well, we can get a portion of those people that may participate, may be interested in music. But if I just create an event specifically catered towards young people in the music industry, and let's be realistic, they define young people as between 12 and 29. So in the music industry, that's like probably more than half the industry, right?
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot of people that need help. Like they don't know what that next step is. So my entire job, basically, the way that I see it with Youth Ventures through Music NL, is to kind of go to people and say, what's your sticking point?
Right.
All right, let's talk about your sticking point. There are some resources I use and stuff like that to kind of guide their thinking through things. And that was it. So the songwriting series and workshop series was a 5-week series where we would have a professional development session, ranging on everything from live sound to business skills for a musician, non-performance careers in music, songwriting 101, recording 101. Those are all of them. And then we had a songwriting session, which was it was a little bit guided in that I would provide suggestions. We had a featured songwriter that would talk about their music, how they approach songwriting first, just to get people thinking. And I'd throw out like a prompt or two, like write a song that starts with a chorus, or write like little suggestions and prompts. And it was great. We had like 20 people sign up, which is, again, for this specifically, that Youth Ventures delivery is like good numbers to get that many people that are interested in music.
Awesome.
And it was a wild success. You showed up for the open mic part, which was great. Good to see you there.
It was great to be there, and had a great time attending it.
Yeah, I was really, really happy with the outcome of that. I do a lot of shows, so I'm used to dealing with really large numbers. So in my head, I was like, I'm going to organize this series. We're going to have like 60 people. I'm going to be, can't fit them all in the door kind of a situation. And sometimes, 20 is not crazy. But when I think about it as I helped 20 songs come into existence, I helped 20 people write music really cool. And create that, I actually realized how incredibly awesome it was. And we got great responses. A lot of people seemed to be, I think every session I was kicking people out and they had smiles on their faces. So that's usually a good sign. They wanted to hang out and they enjoyed themselves. So
yes, and it's getting that foot in the door for any musicians that really want to take that jump and really start songwriting but don't know how.
Yeah.
It's giving them that platform and giving them that opportunity that they may not get elsewhere.
And not only that, again, where the Youth Ventures is trying to teach entrepreneurial skills, it's also usually the first step in pursuing music, right? Like usually we're all drawn in by the creative element of it, figures. And there's a lot of people that know how to do that part. They know that part intimately, but they don't know, okay, how does this become a real thing now? Yeah. I know that in my bedroom or when I play live, I can sound amazing, but how do I make that happen? What are the other steps and how do I get money? And so my whole hope was like, hey, people, come write songs if you have downtime. By the way, anyone watching this, if this comes out in time, this position runs until March 29th. You can contact me at music@youthventuresnl.com if you'd like to chat. And a big part of the position basically is just having chats with people and saying, yeah, what do you want to accomplish? What's your business? And what barriers are you hitting?
I think a really, really valuable thing too, about that songwriter series that you did is meeting other songwriters and meeting other people. That's, we're talking about school, we're talking that kind of thing. The most valuable thing you have really is the other people that you know. Right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would love to do more, put together, regular songwriter circles and stuff like that. I think that would be really cool. Yeah.
I've considered it. I will say too, one of the coolest parts about that songwriting series, everything was free. It was 100%. There was a bunch of, obviously things cost money to rent out spaces. We had Lanya Vanya, which came through to save us after second stage. And of course, nothing, I'm not making any comments about the cost or anything like that, but the fact that I was able to offer this entire program for free was really wicked to me. And I am really hopeful. Again, we had some really good responses, both from my bosses as well as individuals that were participating. So I am very, very hopeful that we can do something like that again.
Oh, yeah, big time. And again, another opportunity for musicians and up-and-coming singer-songwriters that want to take that next step. Mm-hmm. So you recently put out an RPM yourselves as a Lost and Found called Lies and Bad Intentions.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the RPM challenge as a whole because I recently had Ellen Leon on the podcast to talk about the RPM challenge. And I recently hit a record, newfound releases, 30 of them, 21 out of 30 were from this challenge. Pretty insane. I don't know how I did it. And I'm never going to have those numbers again. Just letting you guys know that now, but you never know.
Next year.
Next year, absolutely. Now, how important are those challenges for singer-songwriters and especially creators that want to take that jump?
Yeah, for me, it's been really big RPM. I didn't know about RPM until I moved here a couple of years ago. And I don't know. It's been a lot of fun. I love it. Having a deadline on what you're doing is
forces you to make it real.
It's so important. I think people don't, including myself, don't realize how important something is, or a deadline is. But for me, it's been awesome. I've loved it. That was a big experience for me like soon after I moved here, I did an RPM challenge. I just wrote a song. I wrote one song and I put that out. And they emailed me and they ended up interviewing me on CBC about it. And they put me on The Signal and played my song. And I was like, what the hell's going on?
What an outcome.
CBC are great. CBC are great though. And like having that kind of supporting the independent singer-songwriters. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, they are for sure. And like, so for me, that was like an early little taste of like, holy crap, like, this is something, this is really exciting.
There's momentum to this. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
When you're like, you're kind of hesitant to start something and then you give it a little bit of gas and the universe is like, we're receptive to this.
It's a good sign, right?
It's a great sign.
And then the arts and letters thing, like putting that in the museum there and like my song. But yeah, RPM, both years. Well, I guess this is my third time doing it now. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. I love writing. I love recording. I do a lot of recording myself. I have some stuff ready to drop. I'm just going to play a few more shows around before I put it out. Mm-hmm. But some of that has come to light through RPM. But this one, I think like a big thing about this RPM for us was like writing together for the first time for me.
Yeah,
and,
that was one for me too.
Yeah, and like just kind of getting to know you in that way and seeing each other's workflow, recording and that kind of thing. That was really fun. And I think that like, just grew the relationship and, made me, and the respect that I have for you was grown from that too. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We came up with some stuff that we liked. We came up with 5 or 6 songs, I think.
6 songs.
6 songs. Yeah.
6 songs in a month is pretty good for an RPM too.
Yeah, and usually
it's like first RPM numbers. I feel like everybody has that first one where they're like, I'm going to do so much. And then every subsequent RPM is a song or two because they realize
that's like
6 songs is a lot.
It is. Yeah. I usually get, I don't want to say stuck, but I get really into one song and I'll put all these layers and then I put one song out. So it's cool to kind of like, really quickly put together 6 of them in the small amount of time that we had to kind of get together and do it and just go. Like, it's like the best feeling, I think, getting into that creative flow state. It's just so
the just go comment, I think, really resonates. The fact that we went from 0 songs to 6 that are not, I mean, I don't know if they're all going to be like top grade on the greatest hits or anything, but like they're decent songs. Right. There's not a single one of them I don't like.
Right.
And just to know that we can create that out of thin air if we had such a push is it's good to know.
Just, it was like a good exploration of ourselves and what we can do.
Absolutely.
And, it's a good starting point for that, I think.
Oh, for sure. Now, we're going to get to one of those songs off the RPM challenge shortly following this conversation on the Musical Connections podcast. So any other future plans for any more music? Are you going to do like another full-length album this time where you guys go into the studio and record this and really make a go at it?
I could see us doing more live recordings just to kind of commemorate some of the things we do, especially if we're, doing something we feel is special. I could see that happening. But yeah, I do see us writing more.
Recording party? I don't imagine that would not happen.
Why would we stop?
There's talks about, we've talked about looking at now. So again, I think the first phase of this was kind of getting a band together and getting a set together, which was the ship shape thing. Yeah. And then phase 2 has been very fast, which has just been recording these songs and getting some originals going. Yeah. And now that we have a full set plus originals and a band, it's a question of what do bands do? What do we want to do? And that's usually making plans to play a lot live, record some albums. We have a lot of cool creative projects again, as Pat's kind of mentioned. Like a lot of the stuff is very project based. Yeah. So, I mean, we've thrown around ideas of doing like a live recording in a kind of stylized manner, kind of like old school 1930s condenser microphone kind of stuff. Could be fun, but I can't say a timeline yet. Definitely original music coming. Yeah. Definitely lots of live shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you mentioned the socials earlier. We're just going to wrap up here, but plug the socials one more time and where people can find The Lost and Found.
You want to?
Lost and Found, I know.
Lost and Found. Yeah.
Band. I know. Look it up.
This didn't happen, people.
We're going to find
it.
We nailed it the first time.
We're going to find out what our socials are.
This is actually not live. We're recording this.
Well, how good are your editing skills, Zach?
They're wicked.
Good.
But we're keeping this in.
The Lost and Found NL on Instagram. And that's our Bandcamp as well.
And if you search either of our names, Pat Sloan or Ben Chapman-Smith,
Chances are, if you look The Lost and
You'll
Found
find
St. John's, Google's going to take care of you.
there is also a woman who's quite a bit older than me, named Pat Sloan, who does quilting,
Okay.
who has kind of eaten up my Google ability for my entire life. But
That's
I really like
really
her.
funny.
I
like
quite
that.
like her.
Yeah.
Beautiful quilt.
There's a Ben Chapman-Smith
If you
too
ever
that I've been battling. Yeah. There can only be one, especially with a hyphenated name like that.
Yeah.
This is a lot of fun, guys. This won't be your last time. I can guarantee you that. This will definitely not be your last time. This is already been on here 3 times already, and this will not be your last, Pat. So Pat Sloan and Ben Chapman-Smith, they are the founding members of the Lost and Found. Thanks for doing this, and
You're very welcome.
get that book.
Everybody, I'd also like to plug my book here. This is Sea Dogs and Skippers.
It's not actually
We don't know what it's about.
It's about dogs that drive a ship, and then there's a big ghost dog that is chasing the ship.
We think it's
the
Skipper.
ocean.
We think the dog's Skipper.
Yeah.
Buy my book.
It's by Ben Chapman-Smith, not Giff. Guys, thanks for doing this.
Thanks so much, Zach.